Hello there, very good evening to you. Welcome to North West Tonight. I'm Eleanor Moritz. Our top story, another sewage scandal after millions of litres of raw waste are pumped into England's biggest lake, Windermere. The government says it's completely unacceptable and United Utilities could face a criminal prosecution. Also tonight, as police patrols have stepped up in Manchester following terror arrests, we speak to the Chief Constable about keeping the streets safe. Manchester City edge nearer to the Premier League title as Liverpool prepare to say farewell to Jurgen Klopp. Northern Soul on tour as the BBC Concert Orchestra gets ready to take some of the era's best music around the country.
If they'd had the budget, This is how they'd have wanted them to sound. So I think you're hearing them as the makers intended.
And we do have some more rain forecast for tomorrow, but the forecast is for things to gradually settle down as we head towards the weekend. More details coming up later in the programme.
Completely unacceptable. That's what Downing Street had to say today in response to a BBC investigation which found millions of litres of sewage have been pumped illegally into Windermere. United Utilities failed to stop the pollution for 10 hours and didn't tell the Environment Agency for 13 hours after it started. This all happened back in February. Now today the government said there would be a full investigation, and if regulations have been breached, there could be a criminal prosecution. More now from our environment correspondent, Judy Hobson.
It's England's largest and most visited lake, but concerns over the health of Windermere have been growing. Green algal blooms have been developing, caused by sewage pollution. Now, a BBC investigation has found that United Utilities discharged sewage into the middle of the lake for 10 hours in February after a fault developed in the system. Insiders at the company believe 10 million litres of raw sewage could have entered the lake. The problem wasn't reported to the Environment Agency for 13 hours. Windermere has become the focus of a high-profile campaign to end sewage pollution, with a number of celebrities backing the cause. For those involved, today's news didn't come as a surprise.
This is about the regulatory failings within this situation. This is about the exploitation of England's largest lake. And yet again, it is a repeat of almost an exact same incident that happened almost a year ago, or just over a year ago. None of this is good enough. They need to stop dumping sewage into Windermere.
United Utilities says the February fault was unexpected and caused by a problem with the telecoms cable network, which is managed by a third party. They were not notified, they said, and this affected their backup system. In a statement, they said, "As soon as we discovered this fault was affecting the Glebe Road pumping station, our engineers took urgent steps to resolve the situation, and we informed the Environment Agency within an hour of the pollution being confirmed." The Environment Agency says it's still investigating what happened and says it's committed to improving the water quality of this iconic lake.
Well, Judy joins me in the studio now. And Judy, this news broke this morning. Unsurprisingly, during the day, there's been political reaction to this.
Yeah, absolutely. It isn't a surprise, is it? No, the Prime Minister's official spokesperson said the situation in Windermere was completely unacceptable. They also said the Environment Agency is examining what went on, and if they find that a breach has taken place, they'll not hesitate to take enforcement action up to and including a criminal prosecution. Meanwhile, the Lake District MP Tim Farron, he was in the Commons asking for an amendment to the current rules regarding water companies, and this is what he told us.
Well, this incident proves that there isn't enough protection for our waterways, and the regulatory framework we've got is inadequate because United Utilities and others keep shrugging their shoulders and just ducking the blame. And that's why my amendment will criminalise water companies who dump sewage into lakes and rivers. There will be huge fines to pay, and chief executives will pay the price personally.
Well, how many times have we done this kind of story? Sewage discharges are happening all over the country, and it's going to take a lot of funding to sort it out. And in Windermere, the infrastructure can't cope, especially in the summer when they have such a huge influx of tourists. But just to be clear, water companies can discharge sewage into the lake after heavy rain, but it's illegal if they do it during a dry spell. That appears to be the situation here.
There is, though, isn't there, an ongoing investigation into all the major water companies?
Yes, that's being undertaken by the Environment Agency. Yesterday, the data watchdog, the Information Commissioner's Office, ordered United Utilities to release all sewage spill figures from 2022. So that could reveal more illegal spillages, but obviously we don't know. Currently, the major water companies don't have to reveal their data, and they say this secrecy is actually justified because releasing information would prejudice this investigation. It's the Environment Agency and the water regulator that's looking into how many spillages have happened illegally. Now, it's a long-running investigation, but United Utilities now has 35 days to give that information. Also this week, you might remember 27 rivers and lakes were given bathing water status. Windermere already has that, parts of Windermere does, so we'll be there tomorrow to look at how the Environment Agency tests the water.
Judy, thank you. Well, next tonight, police patrols have been stepped up after 2 men were charged with an alleged terror plot to attack Jewish communities in Greater Manchester. Details of the allegations relating to an Islamic State-style gun attack were given when the men appeared in court in London yesterday. Today, the Chief Constable, Stephen Watson, sought to reassure all communities here in the region as he spoke to our reporter, Kevin Fitzpatrick.
We have really stepped up our levels of engagement, our proactive approaches to protecting our Jewish community from threats. Some of that manifested in the 3 charges that became public yesterday. But we're also working with things like the Community Safety Trust. We have very good relations with them. And I know that our Jewish communities are reassured by what it is that Greater Manchester Police are doing to keep them and their families safe.
Now, clearly these are just allegations at the moment, aren't they? But even the suggestion of a gun attack with an automatic weapon is horrifying, isn't it?
Of course, people are very frightened by this, and of course there is a limit to what I can say in respect of matters which are now sub judice. All I would say is that it is a matter of fact that there are some people out there who would seek to do harm to others for no better reason than their religion or their race or their creed or their beliefs. And for me, that is simply unacceptable. That is something we will always combat. And I'm confident that wherever possible, we can keep people safe, and we'll continue to do that.
Stephen Watson was speaking on the 3rd anniversary of him becoming Chief Constable, after the force had been put into special measures in 2021 for failing to investigate 80,000 crimes. A recent inspection found it's now significantly improved, including becoming the fastest force in the country at answering calls.
It is no secret the force was in a bit of a pickle. We've gone from being wholly reactive and racing ahead of demand in a way that implied that we couldn't cope, and as a result making daft decisions not to do certain things like investigate what we described as minor crime, to a point where that has completely turned on its head. We are very focused on delivering the basics to the public, those enduring things that the public are right to ask for: picking up the phone, getting to them quickly, making accurate records, investigating all reasonable lines of inquiry, making arrests, bringing people to justice, and preventing stuff from happening in the first place.
You can list all these improvements, can't you? But often when you speak to people in the street, the perception is still that there is a lot of crime and they don't always feel safe. Is there any evidence that that's changing?
It is true to say that public confidence will always lag the reality. And in fairness, there's no point in whinging about it. We, GMP, were not doing a good enough job, and therefore people started, not all people, but people started to lose faith in us. It will turn on things like the major investment that we've made in a back-to-basics traditional operating model, which includes at its heart proper neighbourhood policing. So you can see the true GMP. You can see the face of GMP supporting you and your families. And we'll be doing the basics brilliantly. That's where confidence comes from.
More news now, and a 14-year-old girl has appeared in court accused of attempted murder and possession of a knife in school after an incident in Stockport this month. The youngster, who can't be named, has also been charged with threats to kill. Meanwhile, an undercover operation by police in Lancashire has found that a 15-year-old was easily able to buy knives unchallenged in a number of shops in Preston. More than half of the stores visited by the teenager didn't ask for ID and sold them a knife. The shops have been issued with a warning. The operation was carried out by the police as part of a national week of action to tackle knife crime. Lancashire brain cancer campaigner Laura Nuttall is to be honoured by Manchester University with a scholarship in her name. Laura graduated from the university whilst undergoing treatment for an aggressive brain tumour. She died a year ago at the age of 23. Now there'll be a scholarship in her memory for students with a disability studying there for a degree.
Laura loved her time at Manchester, particularly when it was nearly taken away from her, and she really thought she wouldn't be going back to university. In fact, she was told she wasn't going to go back to university, and she really appreciated the support that she got in her studies, because it was really difficult for her to have time away to go to Germany. She was on chemo, she was having radiotherapy, and there needed to be little tweaks just to make that all comfortable for her. So the idea that she might be able to help somebody else study that would otherwise have found it difficult is fantastic. She'd be so proud.
The tremendous legacy of Laura Nuttall. Now, carers allowance is something we've been speaking a lot about on North West Tonight recently. We featured cases, you may remember, where people have found themselves facing huge demands for overpayments of the benefit they've been receiving for years. One couple from Greater Manchester, though, have told us that the carers allowance they receive is not enough to live on. Martin Barrow looks after his wife Anna full-time. She has motor neurone disease, and they say their joint income is 70% less than it was before her diagnosis. Isabel Fry has the story.
Do the waltz.
Martin stopped working in November last year to become a full-time carer for his wife after she was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. He gets just over £80 a week in carers allowance. It provides vital support, but they say it's not enough for what amounts to a 24-hour job.
I believe that it's that thing of, as an unpaid carer, I believe you're actually saving the government money, because I want to do this. If you can then give me something as a grant or to be able to...
To make your job easier, because like you say, you shouldn't have to be holding me under the arms to help me to get into a shower and kind of straddling, and that just makes your caring role more difficult. I know you joke that you can walk backwards through the house, but you shouldn't have to.
There are around 400,000 unpaid carers in the North West. Across the whole of the UK, they're saving the government £162 billion a year. Yet this benefit is the lowest of its kind, and this is something that the MNDA wants to see changed.
What we want from government is to increase the rate so that it's reflective of the true value of the care that loved ones and carers provide. A pretty significant amount of carers are doing over 100 hours provision of care a week to their loved one. And we looked at this, and all M&D carers across the UK are actually saving health and social care or social care services £185 million a year.
There are other benefits that those in the same or similar situations to the Barrows can apply for, but this isn't always a simple process.
We tried to get a passported benefit to apply for the DFG grant through Universal Credit. So to get Universal Credit, we applied, we were granted Universal Credit, but unfortunately we missed out by about £20. So therefore we're not entitled to the £30,000 through the passported benefit. It's frustrating, isn't it?
A spokesperson for the Department of Work and Pensions says carers' allowance has increased by almost £1,500 since 2010. Those on low incomes are potentially eligible for extra.
I think it's always difficult when you're talking about finances, especially in this climate, because everyone's struggling, and people might say, well, why should you get this £30,000? But it's things like your argument about me not getting state pension. That money that I will never get could be put towards what I need now.
Isabel Fry, North West Tonight, Eccles.
Thank you there to Martin and Anna for sharing their story with us. Now, it's finally happened. After all these weeks, Manchester's new Co-op Live Arena officially opened last night. After so many delays and cancellations due to technical issues and ongoing building work, thousands were there to finally see the Bury band Elbow perform. The venue is the biggest indoor arena in the country and it cost nearly £450 million to build.
Elbow are amazing. And the venue was really good, much better than after all the trouble and all the concern. It was a fantastic venue.
And the venue was really great.
Yeah, really organised.
Missing a couple of hooks on the back of the ladies' toilets doors.
We were worried we'd have to bring hard hats and we didn't.
Elsewhere, plans for more than 50 safari-style lodges overlooking giraffes grazing on grassland at Chester Zoo have been approved. They'll be based on African designs and allow guests to stay overnight and wake up to the sight of the animals in a savannah-type enclosure. More news, of course, online, including the story of how a Lancashire landlord whose tenants had to live in homes containing mould and electrical hazards has been fined nearly £14,000. Liverpool's Lord Mayor Richard Kemp has pledged financial support for care leavers. He said he'll use his year in office to help teenagers leaving the care system. And there's been a 5-fold increase in the number of visa applications on the Isle of Man since Brexit. You can see all those stories and more on the BBC website, bbc.co.uk/news and the BBC News app. Now, sport, Manchester United play their last home game of a difficult season against Newcastle tonight as they build up to next weekend's FA Cup final against neighbours Manchester City. The Blues, of course, could well have been crowned Premier League champions by then. A 2-0 win at Spurs last night sent them 2 points clear of title rivals Arsenal with just one game left to play. Richard Askham reports.
Tomorrow start to think about West Ham, and of course it's a pleasure to give us the chance to depend on us for the last game against this contender. Like reality in modern football, in the margins are so tight.
Tense end to the season, isn't it? It's a weekend of goodbyes at Anfield as manager Jurgen Klopp's assistant Pep Lijnders has been named as the new boss of Austrian side RB Salzburg. The main focus, of course, is on Jurgen Klopp's final game in charge. Wolves at Anfield on Sunday. It'll bring to an end a remarkable 9 years in which the Germans won major trophies and hearts right across the city.
I'm Margaret Aspinall, former chair of the Hillsborough Family Support Group. I lost my son James at Hillsborough. The first time I met Jurgen Klopp, I was quite surprised how much he and the knowledge he had of Hillsborough. The Hillsborough families have been through so much. We've won a lot of things with Jurgen. He's took all that pain away for them 90 minutes. He really gets the people of Merseyside. He really does. I feel he is a Scouser.
Hi, my name is Dan Shields. I'm the head chef at Home Baked Cooperative Bakery in Anfield, and this is our Klopp pie, named in honour of Jurgen Klopp. It's based around a kind of mixture of steak and ale and meat and potato, but it's packed with those kind of German, almost pickled ingredients. So even though obviously Jurgen's leaving the end of the season, which we are devastated about, particularly when we found out, we're going to keep on running the pie. The last couple of years we found it's probably been a staple, really, of what we do.
I'm Neil Pooler. I live in Formby, less than half a mile away from Jurgen and Ulla. In February 2022, I had what's called a sudden cardiac arrest. In the period when I was in hospital, somebody put something through our letterbox. It was a signed Liverpool shirt from themselves and the team squad. To me, it was a sign of their kindness, if you like, and their place within the local community, that they did something like that completely unprompted. It means a great deal.
Dear Steve, firstly, I hope you don't mind me writing to you.
I just want to get in touch to let you know that you're in my thoughts and in my prayers. My name's Colette Halliday. My connection to Jurgen Klopp, sadly, is through some personally tragic circumstances with the loss of my partner. Stephen was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis and deteriorated. A great friend of his, Andy Johnson, approached the club and said, could you possibly do anything? A little while after, out of the blue, came this absolutely beautiful letter. We just all burst into tears when we read it because it was just beautiful. And I was so pleased that he got to see it because he died about 3 weeks later. The managers, players, owners, directors, staff and supporters of this club excuse me, are all supporting you. And the best thing about this, I know, is what a difference it can make. Steve, we're all with you. You'll never walk alone. Jurgen Klopp. I think that's a measure of the man.
Unusual for somebody to come from outside the city and really get a flavour of what he needs to be doing. He will be missed massively.
It's now 2 and a bit years since my problem. If I see him, he's coming out of his drive or he's driving past, he'll always stop and ask how I am.
If you only meet him for 5 seconds, you feel as if you've known him for years.
Well, there's plenty more to come over the coming days on the departure of Jurgen Klopp. Now, further up the M62, a bit of Wigan is heading to Manchester tonight. A show featuring Northern Soul songs played with the BBC Concert Orchestra is on at the Aviva Studios venue. It's part of a tour inspired by the last year's Northern Soul Prom. Here's Andy Gill.
The BBC Concert Orchestra rehearse at Manchester's Aviva Studios this afternoon. Tonight's concert, a kind of homecoming for Northern Soul.
We're in what some people would argue is the birthplace of Northern Soul, in that the Twisted Wheel Club was in Manchester, which is seen by a lot of people as the first Northern Soul club. Although me being partisan from Wigan, I'd argue that Wigan Casino is... But no, I mean, obviously this is the heartland of Northern Soul, so we're looking forward to it.
Stuart McConey has curated the show and compares it. Northern Soul was a movement in the North and Midlands in the 1960s and 70s. US songs that had flopped at first, becoming dance floor classics in the UK.
What is it about Northern Soul that really gets to people, do you think? They speak directly, I think, to, in the best sense of the word, ordinary people's lives and concerns. They're about heartbreak, they're about work, they're about city life. They're just irrepressibly great music, and I think that they've always been strongly rooted here. I think there's always been a kinship between the industrial north of England and the Midlands, where there's been the heartland, and the industrial cities of America, like Detroit, where the music originated from.
The tour follows last year's Northern Soul Prom at the Albert Hall. Conductor Joe Dodell working out how to play the songs with a full orchestra.
Basically, you had to listen to, very poor recording, mono sometimes, and try and pick out some of those details and elaborate on them as well. One of the biggest jobs was actually writing endings, because every Northern Soul song, like most songs at that time, fade out, which just doesn't work live. So sort of writing endings that make a kind of satisfactory closure to songs.
These are how the people who made the records would have wanted them to sound. If they'd had the resources...
The budget.
If they'd had the budget,
Yeah.
This is how they'd have wanted them to sound. So I think you're hearing them as the makers intended.
After tonight's Aviva show, there are dates in Sheffield and Gateshead. Andy Gill, BBC North West Tonight, Manchester.
Northern Soul played by an orchestra sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Well worth a listen. Abby's here with the weather.
Yes, and it's been a bit of a mixed day today, hasn't it? Our weather watchers have been out, as always, in full force, capturing the best and the worst bits of the day. I think this was probably one of the best bits of the day, wasn't it? Thank you to Sunshine Girl and her noble steeds for sending this photo in. It looks like a lovely time for a dog walk. Not so much a little bit later, though. We have seen some really heavy showers. We've seen a couple of flashes of lightning as well. I've been keeping an eye on the radar, and some of those showers have been very heavy. Thank you to Jeans Jules for sending this photo in. As always, do keep the pictures patches coming, and you can even sign up to be one of our weather watchers. Forecast for tomorrow then is going to be a fairly cloudy day, and there will be outbreaks of rain moving through, something quite light and patchy initially. That then looks to wiggle away and then move back in as we head towards the evening, and some of that rain later in the day does look particularly heavy. So low pressure very much driving our weather. It's this weather front that's giving us a bit of a headache for tomorrow. It's a waving front, so it will wave and bring a little bit of patchy rain in the morning and then return in the evening, and that rain does look a bit heavier later in the day. But as we head towards the weekend, the general theme is for our weather to settle down and improve a little bit. Overnight tonight, the showers easing, so turning drier with some clearer skies initially, a little bit of mist and fog forming under the clearer skies, and then more cloud in general in the early hours of tomorrow morning, and a little bit of patchy rain. Temperatures, though, very mild, 9 or 10 degrees, so certainly no risk of frosts over the next few nights. We'll start the day tomorrow then quite a lot of clouds, some patchy rain, and then gradually that rain does look to peter out a little bit around the middle part of the day. We could see skies brightening up, and then another band of rain starting to edge in. That rain later in the day does look particularly heavy, but further north and west it may well be drier and potentially a little bit brighter, and whenever we do see the sunshine this time of year, it really bolsters the temperatures. So around 17 to 20 degrees Celsius will be our temperatures for tomorrow. And then our low pressure gradually pulls away as we head towards the weekend, and we see this ridge of high pressure moving in. That will start to settle things down. So gradually, I think Friday and Saturday a mix of sunshine and showers, but Sunday into the start of next week, drier with a little bit more sunshine. This is at the moment how Friday is shaping up. I wouldn't take these graphics too literally. The showers are likely to be very well scattered, but still potentially on the heavy side. Temperatures on Friday, though, up as high as 20 degrees and staying that way through the weekend into next week.
Abby, thank you. Warm and wet, I think, the buzzwords for this week.
I know, this is typical for May.
It is. Anyway, thanks for watching. Phil McCann's here with your late news. Until then, have a very good evening, won't you? Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.